Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back. It's Force here again. Time to talk some more games. Specifically, Last Epoch recently just launched their very first cycle, also known as a season, with patch 1.1, the Harbingers of Ruin. This update added a bunch of new stuff to the game, including a brand new system where you fight mini-bosses that reward powerful loot for you as you level, pinnacle boss fights against new endgame bosses with one very challenging final fight, overhauls to the endgame monolith grind, a new mechanic, dodging, tons of quality of life improvements, a whole bunch of new gear to find, and pages of balance updates and bug fixes. This was a fairly sizable content update just added to the game, completely free of charge. Last Epoch's developer, 11th Hour Games, have sponsored this video. They asked me to give you a rundown of all the new additions. Also, along with this, we're hosting a giveaway where one lucky viewer can win a Last Epoch branded Starforge Systems PC for free. More on that at the end of the video. But first, let's talk about this new cycle. What is it? Well, think of it just like any other ARPG season, where you'll start making a brand new character, playing through the game again, but experiencing a bunch of new additional stuff. For starters, we've got the new Nemesis System. So as you play the season, you make your new character and you start leveling up through the campaign. At first, much of what you see is going to be similar to what you might remember from around launch, but there's one major difference and new inclusion, and that is the Nemesis System that introduces these new random encounters that can spawn at any point throughout your campaign. Now, they will also show up in monoliths and dungeons once you get to that point, but the first time you see one, it will no doubt be at some point within your first hour of running through the campaign on your new character. Sooner or later, you're gonna see this little icon on your map, and if you head towards it, what you'll find is this floating pile of armor above a dead NPC. Now, this actually plays into the lore of this cycle of this update. These are actually the corpses of once powerful warriors who were slain by the Harbinger, which is like the big bad guys in this update, more or less. So clicking on the Nemesis then brings up a menu where you'll be able to see 4 items from that slain warrior. These items are always going to be rare, exalted, or unique, with bonus chances of being the latter two. So the Nemesis type and the stats will be determined by the zone that they spawn in, and also the Nemesis's loot will be determined by your character level when you find it. So you find a Nemesis, you click on the body, and then you see 4 pieces of loot. At that point, you've got 3 different options. You can banish the Nemesis, losing access to its items, and then the next time you find a Nemesis, it will be a different one with 4 newly rolled items. So if you don't like the items you see, you can just banish him and move on to the next one in your next Nemesis encounter. You can challenge the Nemesis. At that point, you will fight it. If you win, you're going to get those exact 4 items that you saw. Or you can empower the Nemesis. You'll still have to fight it, but if you win, it then runs away. Why would you want to do that? Well, because it's called Empower. The trade-off is making it more powerful. The next time you come across the Nemesis, it will be that same one, those same 4 pieces of loot, but they will all be upgraded and just flat out better. The types of improvements that you're going to get on this empowered loot include any rare or exalted items can have their affixes upgrade all the way up to tier 7 and can also increase their forging potential to beyond the item's typical limits. In addition to that, they can also obtain sealed affixes up to tier 7 as well. As for unique items, they will have a chance of gaining legendary potential or actually just turning into a legendary item with a random affix applied to it. So the next time you find the Nemesis, you're going to be given the same 3 choices. It'll say banish, challenge, or empower. And if you empower a second time, the same thing happens. You fight the Nemesis once more. If you win, they flee, and then all 4 items then get even better. Now, you can only choose to empower items twice. Then the next time you find that Nemesis, you'll have to challenge it once more. At that point, you will fight it for a final time, and then finally, those 4 items will drop, and now they have had 2 rounds of boost and enhancements. The end result is you're getting some really interesting, souped up, powerful gear super early in the game. I mean, this has been really cool to just have these like enhancements, to come across a Nemesis, to see an item that has affixes and boost and plus skills that I want, and then to be like, I can boost this thing twice and it can get potentially even crazier, and that's exactly what's happened. But what if you come across a Nemesis who has loot that you don't want? Well, like I said, either banishing or challenging the Nemesis means that the next Nemesis you encounter will be different, and so how it usually goes is you just keep cycling through until a Nemesis shows up that has any one of those 4 pieces of gear that you happen to want, or multiple. You then empower twice so that gear gets as many boosts as possible, and if you get lucky, you fight them, you take some super powerful gear. What's really interesting about this system is it's like just another way of another layer added to the loot hunt, and I thought it was really cool having this new system where I could see up front like the item that I was going to get, and then have this opportunity that then you deal with the RNG of, oh man, how much better is it going to get? I know it's going to get better, but exactly how much better? And the fact that early in the game you can get these items with these affixes you want and have the potential for their affixes to go up to tier 7 to boost their forging potential, letting you make additional improvements and tinkering to it through the forging system. To get an extra layer of sealed affixes added on top, it's just free affixes, free stats, or for any uniques to get extra legendary potential or just flat out turn into a new powerful legendary. Also, once you reach higher levels, there's an additional mechanic here. The Nemesis can carry this special item called the Egg of the Forgotten. That item can then be replaced with any unique that you have that lacks legendary potential or Weaver's Will, allowing you to upgrade that unique by empowering the Nemesis, doing that whole system. So then with that Forgotten Egg, you can take an item that you already know you want, it's in your inventory, put it into that Forgotten Egg, and just get like free upgrades to it through that empowering system. It's just really fun all around. Now, I do have a couple of qualms with it. My major complaints being, one, I wish we encountered the Nemesis more often. This seemed to happen quite frequently. Right when I started the season, the first day that I was playing, throughout the course of like the 10 hours I was sinking in, I seemed to get Nemesis fairly often. But then as time went on, as I moved into my second and third day, I would sometimes go 1 or even 2 hours without coming across a Nemesis. Now, part of that might be my fault for me not thoroughly searching the maps enough, because I think part of this whole system is to encourage players, especially once you go into the monolith and start grinding the monolith levels, to search out the whole map to see if there's a Nemesis in there so that you can then further engage with that system. But yeah, later on at least, it seems like I wasn't encountering it as much as I'd like to, so I would like them to boost the numbers personally. And then number 2, they're pretty darn face roll. I do imagine that it's going to start getting more challenging as you push into higher difficulty, although I have heard otherwise. But at least as of now, after my first few days playing the season, none of the Nemesis fights have been much of a challenge, not even remotely close. But the Nemesis system isn't the only thing you might notice when you first jump back into the game. There's also a brand new mechanic, a dodge roll. That's right. They've added the ability for every character in the game to dodge. The ability is specifically called Evade. It's available to all classes and is an entirely separate ability. It's not on your action bar. It works similar to movement skills. However, it doesn't count as a traversal skill. It's available from level 1. It can't be unequipped or swapped with other skills. It's just a default ability that everybody has right away. It's also worth noting there are no iframes, so you can't use it to cheese boss or enemy attacks, but it does let you physically move out of the way. So if you've got telegraphed ground attacks, this does let you get out of the way quickly. And it also means now that everybody has access to it, that the developer can start designing fights and boss encounters with the knowledge that everyone is going to have access to a movement ability, even if you're not using one of your class skills in your build for it. So by default, Evade comes with 2 charges and is on a short cooldown. As you level, that cooldown gets even shorter, and this ability can be further modified by other abilities, affixes, and blessings. This can also be changed drastically. There are some new uniques in the game that fundamentally change how the Evade skill works. Feels great, nice new addition, I think, especially in conjunction with movement skills like my shift ability on the rogue that I'm playing. But just as well, now people who are playing with builds that don't have movement skills as part of your skill setup, now you have a new tool at your disposal, and I think that's a great change as well. It's just nice to have in an ARPG. I think going forward, most ARPGs should have a default Evade. It just feels so good in there, right? And it adds a lot, it adds a whole other layer, right? Instead of just having a skill that you're binding for movement, to have a additional layer. It's an additional thing to think about and to use in that gameplay loop. And the other big new content we have to talk about here is this patch's namesake. It is the new endgame system of the Harbingers. So this is a new series of boss fights that culminate in a brand new pinnacle boss, which is said to be quite difficult. In order to reach that boss, though, you you first need to challenge and defeat each of the Harbingers. So these bosses are found deep within the Monolith of Fate, as this is a new endgame system. So you have to progress through the Monolith, you have to progress the corruption levels in the different timelines, and eventually you'll encounter the Harbingers. And by fighting and defeating them, you will in turn progress your ranks within the Forgotten Knights, which is the newest faction that's been added to the game. So Harbingers can be found in two main variants. There's Agile and Brute. Beyond having different combat styles, they also gain abilities from each respective timeline's boss, which means depending on which of the 10 timelines you fight a particular Harbinger in, the encounter will vary depending on that timeline's boss. So you have to defeat the Harbingers in every timeline before you can access the portal to the new Pinnacle boss, which the developer has said is the most difficult fight to be added to Last Epoch to date. And according to what I've seen from the community, this seems to be holding true. The boss seems to be a bit of a hard wall that many players have been running up against over the course of this past week. Now, I've been playing for the past handful of days. I am still making my way through the Monolith, but I'm definitely looking forward to getting smacked by this brand new challenge, or maybe not. I am playing a Dive Bomb Falconer after all. It's been relatively breezy so far. I think my survivability is what's going to come into question going forward. As mentioned, there's a new faction here as well, the Forgotten Knights. This is available to both Merchant Guilds and Circle of Fortune players. Rather than being an alternative third choice, this is an addition. The Forgotten Knights rep system does function similar to the other factions though. Increasing your rank will grant you unique rewards. These include things like increasing the Harbinger unique drop chance, lucky blessing rolls, and an increased chance to drop the brand new crafting material known as the Glyph of Envy. So this is a new glyph that actually lets you siphon stability from an item onto your most recent Monolith timeline. Basically, this makes it easier to progress through the Monoliths on any alt characters you might play during the cycle. So that is a recap of all of the major new content and mechanics, but there's been a bunch of other changes and improvements that are also worth mentioning. Some big boss changes. So bosses no longer have this variable amount of damage reduction based on how quickly you burnt down their health. Basically, the game sort of punished you if you were damaging bosses very quickly with this variable damage reduction. Now instead, bosses have a number of ward breakpoints. So when a boss's health is reduced to one of the breakpoints, they will gain ward based on their maximum health, at which point you then have to break through the ward before you can start damaging their HP once again. So more significant fights such as chapter, timeline, and dungeon bosses, they will have more breakpoints. Most other bosses in the game will have 2 breakpoints by default. All around, this was done with a few things in mind. They wanted to, first of all, better represent bosses' true amount of health rather than that variable system prior. They wanted to make health leech more reliable, and they wanted to remove the downside for having a higher damage build. Now, we talked about the Nemesis system, but I forgot to mention these new Nemesis weapons. So the Nemesises can drop these vengeful weapons that are meant towards seeking out the destruction of the Harbingers that killed them. So killing a Harbinger while having one of these weapons equipped then turns it into an avenged version with improved stats. So these are new items that have been added to the loot pool that play into this theme of the Nemesises that you're finding while you're playing. In the process to go in to kill the Harbingers, you can then use the Nemesises weapons to avenge them fighting the Harbingers and killing them with it. Again, cool kind of little like flavor text added to this. A bunch of other changes and quality of life stuff as well. For example, they've added 2 new ranks to the Circle of Fortune and Merchants Guild factions, while also reducing the time it takes to reach the higher ranks and revising the rank rewards to make for a smoother progression across the board. All blessings that you unlock as you progress through the monoliths can now be stored and changed out at a brand new vendor. And if you play alts, all characters who share a stash in this cycle can then equip a minimum value of any found blessing once they've cleared the timeline. There's been a few loot filter improvements. For example, you can now filter for legendary potential and Weaver's Will. This is a massive win, a wonderful and important change. You can also now select multiple affix conditions. There are now loot filter rules that are numbered, and you can even show that number on a dropped item to know what filter rule has applied to the item and why you're seeing it. This is great for noobs like me who copy paste filters and try to understand it on the go. Experience changes have made the leveling experience smoother. They've reduced item sell cost, especially early in the game. Stop picking up items just to sell them. It wasn't worth it before, it's less even worth it now. Lots of gameplay balance, UI changes, and further quality of life, and also, yes, 30 new unique items for you to chase for as you play through the new season. All right, that pretty much does it for this overview of Last Epoch's patch 1.1, Harbingers of Ruin. Like I said, I've been playing for the past few days, making my way through the content. I really enjoyed Last Epoch when it launched earlier this year. It feels like a nice new ARPG throwing its hat into the ring, trying to compete with these contenders that have been around for a long time or established IPs IPs like Diablo with Diablo 4 or Path of Exile, which has been around for like 10 years of content. While they might not be on the exact same bar across the board, I do think Last Epoch does a lot of things really well that definitely puts the game up there and makes it a nice game to add into the rotation for ARPG fans. It definitely seems, taking a look at any of the ARPG content creators that I follow, this seems like a game that they're consistently going back to and people have been revisiting for this most recent update. So love to see it. Now, I'm sure you're wondering about that giveaway. Here's the details. We're giving away a custom Last Epoch themed PC made by Starforge Systems. For a chance to win, you just need to head over to twitter.com/forcestrategy. You can enter the giveaway by following myself, following Last Epoch, and then retweeting the tweet, which I will link below. Do keep in mind though that due to giveaway restrictions, this is limited only to US residents. That's only US residents are eligible, but if that does include you, best of luck. Someone's getting a free PC. Thanks again to 11th Hour Games for sponsoring today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview of all of the latest, newest Last Epoch content. And yeah, best of all, it's all free, right? Gotta love it. Big free updates added to a $35 game. This is the direction I want more of gaming to go in the future. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.